Hey everybody, this is the Son of Wonder. Welcome to my channel. This is my very first video, so yay! This is start of what I hope to be something pretty big, and I'm hoping will continue so I could talk about nerd stuff. That is essentially what this channel is going to be about, is all kinds of mess. We're going to talk about DC, Star Wars, Marvel, all sorts of shebangs, and we might even do some ranking videos here and there. So thank you for visiting the channel. You are a blessing. Thank you for even thinking to click on the video. And my very first video will be a review of She-Hulk Attorney at Law Episode 1. Now, I did not have particularly high hopes for this show. I do enjoy the character of She-Hulk mainly because of the 90s cartoon, Hulk cartoon that was out, voiced by Cree Summers. She-Hulk was, and I really enjoyed her character. Thought she had a lot of charisma in the show. So the idea of a live-action She-Hulk series, sounded appealing enough. But the trailers did not win me over. No, they didn't. They definitely were. The CGI, first of all, looked more like Fiona from Shrek rather than it did She-Hulk. So I didn't know if she was going to sing to a bird at some point or actually do some Hulk smashing stuff. So the trailers did not win me over. I have just watched the very first episode, and surprisingly, I did not hate it. I fully expected to, but there were actually a lot of enjoyable moments and a lot of references and tie-ins to other Marvel things, which I enjoy it when they, keep connecting stuff, because a lot of the MCU projects feel disjointed lately, so it's nice to have something that you can tell is connected to the broader world of things. Now, starts off with her origin story, her being in the car with Bruce, talking to him about Captain America's dating life or something like that. It's, funny enough conversation. But what really interested me were the explanations, because at the end, in the post-credit scene of Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, we discovered that Bruce was in his... Bruce Banner, spoiler alert for Shang-Chi and She-Hulk, by the way. Probably should have clarified that beforehand. My apologies. Bruce Banner, we could discover he could turn into human form again. Which was very out of the blue, because it seemed like Professor Hulk was a permanent, but his arm was still in the cast, so that did remain consistent. But we were all like, why is he turning into human form again? It's no coincidence that that reveal also happened to be in the same movie where Abomination had like a 0.2 second cameo. So that's probably why, is because, no coincidence, he's going to be in the She-Hulk show. We find out that Bruce has invented an arm control gizmo sort of thing. He loves inventing gizmos. And apparently it helps him revert back to human form. Even though his arm is still not healed at this point. Another quick little thing to add in here. Mark Ruffalo and Tatiana Maslany actually do have really good chemistry together. I can fully believe them as cousins who get on each other's nerves a lot. Kind of like a brother-sister relationship, but totally believable as cousins. So I did appreciate that. Also, a little bit of her lawyer life, definitely breaking the fourth wall, talking to the audience, saying, this is how I became She-Hulk and all that. And I'm not totally against, the whole fourth wall thing. She does it in the comics. So, I mean, I think, there's like another joke in the thing that I'll get to later on that's kind of heavy-handed when it comes to the meta type humor. But anyway, so they're driving in the car. This is her flashback to how she became She-Hulk, driving in the car. And Grandmaster's party ship from Ragnarok shows up all of a sudden. And they end up swerving out and car wreck. This is where we get to the part where it is pretty fun because the nature of the car wreck and how it happens, the way things play out, is very similar, and it evokes a major plot point in the 1977 to, I forget when it ended, uh, Hulk TV series, live action TV series with Bill Bixby as Bruce Banner and Lou Ferrigno as the Hulk. There's a major plot point in that show. Spoilers for the show if you haven't seen it. I do recommend it though. Really good show. Um, where there's a major plot point in the show where part of Bruce Banner's past is that he was not able to lift a car or save his love interest, Betty Ross, from dying in a car wreck because he wasn't strong enough. And that kind of was what leads him to do the gamma radiation experiments that make him become the Hulk eventually. And so that whole car wreck scene, I feel like, is meant to evoke some of that. I can't be certain, but if it is, that's actually a really cool nod to the show. Now, speaking of which, this is how Jennifer Walters becomes She-Hulk. This is where she, has her first transformation, and this is technically her main origin story. And I am actually not opposed to this origin story. We've had a consistent theme in some of these interviews about lazy writing and just mistakes like that. But I feel like this is a well thought out, based on stuff we've previously seen in the Hulk universe, the Edward Norton Hulk, which I love that movie. I love that movie. Probably I think one of the best superhero movies because it does such a great job of portraying the Hulk. But a plot point in that is that when Samuel Stearns has the blood of Bruce Banner fall on his head starts growing, becoming the leader from the comics. Hopefully, he became the leader, and hopefully we might see him in this show itself. But that very idea is carried on to this now, where Bruce is bleeding, and so is Jennifer Walters, and his blood falls onto her part where she's bleeding on her arms, and that's how the gamma radiation gets into her. I like that. I think, again, like I said, falls along with stuff previously established. We're doing pretty good. So after that, she kind of goes Wanderer Hulk mode, which is kind of fun, having her be the one to finally have to wander in the woods because she doesn't know where to go and all that. Eventually, Bruce finds her after turning into the Smart Hulk himself and brings her to a lab in Mexico. Now, this is kind of where the MCU references start to, just fall over the place, and even references from completely different franchises, universes, if you will. I did enjoy a lot of the exposition in this show, in this episode, because I like, knowing the different details, knowing things we hadn't previously established. Because if I'm being totally honest, they didn't really set up the whole Professor Hulk line in Endgame well enough for me to believe that, for that to be believable enough for me. So a few different pop points in this one. At least explain it a little bit, or give a few more details as to how that all happened, because it really is just a 5-year time job. And hey, he's Professor Hulk. All he says is that he just spent a lot of months in a gamma lab, and that's really it. But this show kind of adds a little bit more details to add, like the circumstances of it and who helped him. Tony Stark helped him, and so I do enjoy those kind of details. Come to find out, Bruce shares information with Jennifer that their DNA is, I'm about to get sciencey on you guys, so buckle up. I don't know how the best to explain it. Is syncopated somehow. It can handle gamma radiation better. It can almost absorb it. It's not poisonous like it would be to most humans. Now, this whole explanation seems a little bit forced to me. Did you have to really explain how? The whole thing of Marvel Comics is Stan Lee, the late great Stan Lee, who of course created the Hulk and all that, and helped create She-Hulk. Stan Lee was not a scientific person, but he enjoyed putting science into the comics, making it sound science-y, if you will, and whatnot. Uh, but the whole idea of like saying that their DNA is especially designed to, you know, become Hulks. I don't know how I feel about it. It's kind of hit or miss, but it's not obviously like a major negative gripe or anything. Uh, it's kind of funny because the Grandmaster's ship, that whole thing that ended up causing the wreck, causing her to get the Hulk powers in the first place, is kind of just flown by after that. He just says, it's interesting because he says they were probably trying to send him a message, which I have no idea what that means. This is more of a review and really a breakdown, so I didn't really, research every little bit to see, what that could be. Or it is strange that that would be the Grandmaster's ship and that they'd be sending him a message somehow. I don't know what that will tie into later, or if it will tie into anything, based on how some of these post-credit scenes have not gotten answered over the course of the MCU through the years. But we will see. Anyway, so it's also interesting because a few things that are in the facility, if you will, in Mexico, the resort. It looks like a resort. Is an Iron Man mask that looks like it could belong to the Iron Legion featured in Age of Ultron. There's even some damage around the eyes that it kind of invoke when Ultron was doing the whole zombie thing when he first showed up to the Avengers. That was all creepy. James Spader did a phenomenal job. But so that is kind of what that invokes. I do wonder if that's like it's not more specific than that, but it might just be a simple reference to that. Likewise, there is first thing she sees, Jennifer Walters sees when she wakes up from having been captured by Hulk and then brought over to the resort, if you will, is a Led Zeppelin T-shirt. And I do wonder there does seem to be a consistent Led Zeppelin theme. Led Zeppelin is what played in Thor Ragnarok in the beginning of the movie as well as the final battle, and Led Zeppelin was referenced in Far From Home, the very funny line when it is AC/DC playing on the jet that Happy plays, but Peter thinks it's Led Zeppelin. So funny, good dons like that. Again, I enjoy stuff like that when, you're nodding to all, the other MCU things. Again, it makes it feel more grounded, more connected, and all that. Continuing, we discover that Jennifer, at first, kind of seems more like we know the original Hulk to be, where she's just angry and yelling and all that stuff. But after a certain test, it is revealed that she can perfectly control her powers, which is comic accurate. So I don't really have a problem with her, just kind of being of the same mind, because that's one of the things that has always distinguished She-Hulk from regular Hulk, is that regular Hulk is kind of two separate people. It's, the whole monster and then Bruce Banner's very smart person mind inside of him. And then She-Hulk is just all Jennifer Walters in Hulk body and out and normal human body. So that, as far as explaining it goes, they don't really explain it. It's just kind of one of those things where Hulk's like, oh, shocked, I'm actually kind of jealous or whatever. But it's not really explained. Whether it should be explained or not, again, it's similar to them having the DNA that is responsive to all that. I don't know if it would be a good explanation if they tried, so they might as well just not explain that. Also, it is very funny. There is a Pixar reference to the scene where Bing Bong dies in Inside Out. And I always get very emotional at that scene, so it's just funny that they thought to reference that and how Bruce also gets emotional, so I thought that was pretty funny. So continuing on, we have a few references to when the Hulk was brought back to human form in different points in his life. He says a few times he jumped out of a jet, which would be a reference to the Edward Norton Hulk movie that does indeed exist. That is not a figment of people's imaginations, that is connected to the MCU. There's also a reference getting knocked out by a robot. I was not clear on that one at first. I believe he's referring to the Hulkbuster battle in Age of Ultron when he is knocked out and then you immediately see him as Banner on the Quinjet. And then there's also a reference to the lullaby that was provided by Natasha for the Hulk to turn back into bear in Age of Ultron. And that line right there, the one that they do referencing that, seems like a kind of a shot at Age of Ultron. And I did have some problems with that movie, so I don't really mind the shot. It's kind of like a She-Hulk kind of says, like, how did that happen again? How was she able to, like, calm you down to where you can go back to Bruce Banner? He's like, I can't really explain it. And so, obviously, there's a shot to Age of Ultron. I think that's funny because I don't really understand it either. From that moment on, we have a bunch of different antics of regular Hulk trying to teach Jennifer Hulk how to become a Hulk. And the way it plays out is very interesting. I can't tell if it's trying to criticize her in some way or Hulk in some way. The point that the characters are at right now in the story would be Hulk is kind of assumptuous that Jennifer is going to go through the exact same struggles that he went through during the Hulk and his 15 years. Now, it does seem a little unfair that she would just be a perfect Hulk already. Like, I don't like it when characters receive their powers immediately, know how to use them. There's no effort. There's no, like, earning the ability to know how to use them correctly or in the best ways. I don't like that. However, there is some stuff implied that could come up later that may end up actually teaching that lesson and saying, hey, even though you're Hulk and you can still retain your consciousness, there's still stuff you have to learn about being one. So I hope they prove Banner right later in the series. It does seem like a plot point that would come up by the finale or whatever. And, again, crazy antics like that. There's a scene where she throws a rock farther than he does, and then he throws it, and it just burns up on re-entry or something like that. That's really funny, and I did like that little moment there. But again, a bunch of different antics. There is something that Hulk says that does kind of interest me. It does kind of weird me out a little bit. And that is when he is talking to Jennifer as they're doing their yoga stuff about how she doesn't want to be a superhero. And Hulk says there are few heroes in a world where he puts it like in a world where there are few heroes left to protect it. Now, that is an interesting statement because at this point in the MCU, chronologically, I believe this is taking place in 2024. That would correspond with the 15 years mentioned earlier in the episode. So I would assume that Falcon is still operating, Winter Soldier is still operating, Kate Bishop is newly partnered with Hawkeye, who's also still operating. Yelena's out there somewhere, but Hope probably doesn't know about her, and she's kind of gone rogue a little bit anyway. But there are definitely other heroes out there. Captain Marvel's kind of MIA. I don't really know what's going on with that. We had the whole post-credit scene with Miss Marvel and whatnot, but that kind of is up in the air at this point. So it is kind of interesting that he says few heroes, few protectors, if you will. I don't know what that entails. I don't know if that means that maybe this takes place in an earlier time in 2024 or a later time in 2024. The timeline has gotten very crowded lately in the MCU. And so it would be interesting if that does not have any more ramifications in the future. Now, to more of the parts that are a gripe about the show, and that would be, it seems like it's very, it seems like it's leaning on Jennifer's side of things where, it's understandable. She doesn't want to be a superhero. She wants to go back to her lawyer job that she's worked toward her whole life. It's very understandable and all that. But it also, Hulk has some valid points. But it seems like it's not treating it like that officially, which is what I said earlier. I'm hoping that they will come back to that. There's also a reference, there's a part where he's given a speech or whatever, and she's like, is that a speech out of a comic book? And see, me, that's pushing the boundaries. If you're doing a show that's based off a comic book, and you say, is that like a speech from a comic book? That's almost too meta. It's like, okay, you don't need to tell me that I'm watching a comic book series. Uh, it's very much a wink at the camera moment. I don't really need to be informed that I'm watching a comic book series. I know I'm watching a comic book series. Also, her apology really isn't an apology, because she does say some pretty mean things to Hulk after all the stuff he's been through, which has been a lot, and he's endured a lot. And for her to just kind of, treat him the way she did toward the end of the episode is a little like, and the fact that, I hope that she gives a genuine apology. So that's really my main gripe, is just the treatment of Hulk at the expense of like making her look like a hero and all that. I'm not really a big fan of that. But what I am a fan of in the show is, some of the writing elements I do enjoy, like the origin of her actual, becoming She-Hulk. I think she's got good chemistry with the other actors going on. I think she's a good actress in and of herself. I think that her relationship with Bruce is pretty funny. And also, speaking of which, all I could hear about this show before, like from test screenings and different things like that, is how comedic it was. It's like almost overly comedic, like just so comedic. I did not get that vibe from the first episode. Now, granted, a lot of these test screeners have seen the first 4 episodes, and that is a lot better of an understanding of what the show will look like. But from just the first episode, it did actually have like the cart with the scene with the wreck, and her wandering is kind of played as very serious. And there's other moments in the show where they like, it's kind of like half and half. It's like it's supposed to kind of be sort of funny, but also, kind of still be serious enough. And I actually kind of appreciated that. I was expecting a comedic blowout. Like they're just like nonstop attempt at joke. But weirdly enough, and fortunately for me enough, it was not that. It was actually more serious than I expected it to be. And I hope that tone will carry on. I think they got a tone right now that's actually pretty decent. And if they can just hold on to that through the rest of the show, we might actually have a decent Marvel show on our hands. Which, after a few of the recenter entries, it would be nice. I have not watched Moon Knight, nor have I watched Miss Marvel, quite so I can't speak for those shows. Mostly I'm referencing, I wasn't a fan of the way WandaVision ended. I did not like Falcon and Winter Soldier as a whole. So I'm mostly referencing those shows like that. I despise What If. I've got to be honest with you guys. I absolutely despise it. But, Hawkeye was decent. I loved Loki. So, it's kind of a hit or miss. So at the end of the day, I'm hoping that this will be a decent Marvel show. Got good chemistry amongst the actors. There's some good story beats. Also, another thing to mention is Bruce mentions Tony quite a few times in this episode. And I like that they seem to be kind of, that he remembers his friend, that they acknowledge that they were friends and that they did have a camaraderie with each other, that Tony helped him build the bar and joked with him about the lab and helped him build the lab, that he was there for him in the blip is comforting when, you kind of just, in Endgame, it's kind of like, oh, he's Professor Hulk and like Tony has his own life and you think they'd all just separated. It's nice to know that it seems like during the blip, if he said a few years, then that has to be during the blip, that they had camaraderie still, and that they were able to build the lab together and joke with each other together. They even carved their names, their initials, in the wood on the bar, and so the stuff like that is nice. I enjoy tidbits of information like that. So at the end of the day, I'm very curious to see how the rest of the show is going to play out. There's a lot of potential here. I mean, there always is for any show in general. But especially for this one, there is a lot of potential, and I think that we are not off to a horribly rocky start. There's just a few kinks in the mix that I need them to fix later on. So, overall, I enjoyed a majority of it. I kind of disliked a little bit of it, but I will give it a thumb slightly upside positive. So, that is my review for She-Hulk. Thank you for watching The Son of Wanda. If for any of you that were not aware, me and my father actually had a previous YouTube channel called As Father and Son. Unfortunately, my father passed away last year, so it is just me now, and I'm carrying on his legacy as the son of Wanda. Thank you for watching. Have a very blessed day, and may the Lord be with you.